FPL Game Week 3 top transfer targets. The first couple of weeks of the season have definitely not started the way that a lot of us predicted and a lot of us had hoped looking at our team. So in today's video, we're going to go through hopefully everything you are discussing. We're going to have a look at players to buy. We're going to talk about some players that you are selling this week, whether I think you should hold on to them and hope the returns eventually turn up, or you should be jumping ship and buying someone else. We'll talk about that across defenders, midfielders, forwards. We'll talk about replacements for the likes of Palmer, Saka and Palmer. We'll talk about some popular transfer combinations if you're looking to use more than one transfer, potentially to downgrade one of those to upgrade a forward as well. And we'll also finish with a free hit draft and a wildcard draft if you're fed up enough with your team that you want to play a chip to get rid of them all. What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim, and subscribe if you are new around here. It is Wednesday morning. I'm recording Tuesday evening and stuff is still going on. It is, of course, a big reminder before we dive into this. The note at the bottom of this screen that the transfer window is still open until Monday evening. That means it will stay open beyond the Game Week 3 deadline. It is a caveat if you're looking to play a wildcard, you're looking to bring in someone like an Ekatike, if you're looking to bring in or sell someone like a Strand Larsen. There are a lot of potential moving parts in the transfer window that could potentially impact the transfers you are looking to make. So all of what I'm going to talk about is relevant at time of recording, but please, if you're watching this later on in the week, always add a caveat of potential news, because it looks like so many Premier League clubs are going to be active in the transfer window between now and that Monday deadline. There's almost no club in the Premier League that I look at now that isn't potentially going to sign a player that could have a knock-on impact in our FPL teams, or maybe even sell a player that might have a knock-on impact. So you can look at Liverpool. What's going to happen with Isak? If Isak leaves Newcastle, what does that do to Newcastle? What does it do to the Johan Vissa move? What does it do to Strand Larsen? You can have a look at the likes of Spurs buying Mohamed Kudus, but if they sign Savinho, if they look to buy someone else in the midfield role, what does that do to potential players that you're looking to buy? If they sign a centre-back, what does it do to Van de Ven? These are just lots and lots of examples. If Chelsea go out and buy Garnacho, does that make Neto a worse option if you're looking for him? There is so much that could happen in the transfer window between now and Monday. So there are lots of transfers we're looking to make this week, a lot revolving around Palmer, but it's a bit of a caveat that you need to be adding a lens of what might happen in the transfer window, and you might get news later on in the week. So I do think this is a week, despite the amount of price changes that look like they're taking place early on going into Game Week 3 and already have taken place, it might be a week to save your transfers because there is so much that could potentially impact some of the players that we're looking to buy. Diving into some of the players that we're looking to sell and have been sold so far this week. Number one is Bruno Fernandes. Now, a penalty miss is a penalty miss in FPL. Unfortunately, it's one of those things that you just have to accept and move on from. It shouldn't really impact whether a player is a good pick or a bad pick. Now, there is a slight caveat that it could, of course, change who takes penalties. Now, at Manchester United, Bruno has taken an awful lot of penalties in his career, and I do not expect him to lose it to the likes of Cunha or Brian Mbeumo. So I don't think that one penalty miss should change whether Bruno is a good option, and it doesn't change it in my eyes, and he is still my current captain going into Game Week 3 for Burnley at home. However, we have seen enough over the first couple of weeks that probably hints that Bruno Fernandes is likely to play deeper for the majority of the season. Now, I don't think that's a reason to sell him straight away, but it might be a reason to buy the likes of Cunha and Mbeumo instead of going for Fernandes. Next up is Palmer. On Tuesday, he was doing individual training. He was not out with the rest of the squad. It does sound like there is a possibility he is available for Fulham at home, although it seems unlikely, and Chelsea will probably not risk him in that game, and it will allow him to have the whole international break off, of course, which takes place between Game Week 3 and Game Week 4, and he probably will be back for Game Week 4 looking at the early diagnosis. Now, we will get an update from Maresca later on in the week in his press conference, and there apparently was a scan that took place either on Tuesday evening or Wednesday morning, it's going to happen, of how bad his injury is. So at the moment, I probably would recommend Palmer as a sell if he's going to miss Game Week 3. But if he's likely to be back in Game Week 4, there is a world where we try and do our best to maybe put him on the bench and use him once he comes back from Game Week 4. Next up is Ryan Aït-Nouri. He is currently yellow flagged. It does look like he's probably going to be unlikely for Manchester City. Again, wait for the press conference. But if he's out, I probably would look to sell, given that a couple of the other fixtures on the horizon for them are not quite as easy from a defensive point of view. Bukayo Saka, along with Martin Odegaard, are major doubts, particularly Saka for game week 3. It looks like he's been ruled out. So Saka, I would be looking to sell. And Odegaard, if you own him, I probably would look to do so as well. There are other options at his price and slightly cheaper that I probably expect to outperform him. Florian Wirtz has been really disappointing in the opening couple of games. He's one of the most sold players this week. He's not getting far forward enough. He's not involved in the sort of actual output, goals and assists, maybe as you'd want him to. Now, the only thing I would add is game week 4 will roll around and we'll want a lot of Liverpool players for Burnley and then Everton at home. And if you're selling Florian Wirtz to someone like a Fernandes, someone like a Brian and Burmo, I'd be a little bit cautious of that because over the next 3 games, I still think Liverpool have better fixtures than someone like a Manchester United midfielder. But if you're freeing up money and you want to go cheaper to afford someone else, I cannot put you off because at the moment, if Isak doesn't sign, Ekitike and Gakpo look like better and just as safe options. Moving on to West Ham, they are currently 1-0 down to Wolves in the Cup. It was a penalty for Wolves, although Strand Larsen was not on the pitch. West Ham feel like absolute sells. If you've got Jared Bowen, he's not worth the 8 million. If you've got Fulkrog, he is not nailed to start given they played that game on Tuesday evening without a striker, and maybe that's what they'll go back to, how they finished last season. If you own them defensively, it looks like there's a possibility they go to a back 4, and that means the fullbacks are less attacking. It means they're slightly less good as picks generally because they don't look like they're going to keep any clean sheets. Then we're moving to Aston Villa. The fixtures are actually really good. So Watkins and Rodgers can be make ways if you've got nothing else to do, but I really think we need to give them a little bit more time because their fixtures remain really good. And then it is Richarlison. There are so many of you buying Richarlison. There are lots of questions about him, but I still remain that at some point he is likely to not start. And when the Champions League might turn around, can Dominic Solanke take minutes off him? Richarlison will keep playing until he drops out of form. And as soon as that happens, Solanke will come back in. I probably expect Richarlison to play game week 3 at home to Bournemouth. But once Solanke's got a full international break to maybe get up to speed, I probably think he is the long-term pick. So I don't think I'd be buying Richarlison. Now, that is lots about potential players to sell and players not to buy and what to do with the players currently in your team. But now we're going to have a look at, of course, the players that you should consider bringing into your team. Starting off with the fixture ticker, which teams have the best and worst fixtures over the next 6 game weeks. The key takeaway for me remains that Aston Villa are at the top here. They have Crystal Palace, Everton, Sunderland, Fulham, Burnley in the next 5 fixtures. It is very difficult for me to recommend selling Ollie Watkins and selling Morgan Rodgers unless it's to do a big restructure. For example, if you want to buy Erling Haaland and you're downgrading Palmer to upgrade Watkins, then I can kind of understand it. But at 9 million, Watkins is a reliable pick. He has been reliable before. So although the performances recently have been really concerning, I do expect them to turn the corner. They play a Palace side who have been really good, but do play on Thursday in the Europa Conference League qualifiers, which will likely make them a little bit tired going into the game week 3 fixture. It is also expected that Aston Villa are going to be without Kamara in their midfield. Now you might think, well, that might be a bit of a loss, but actually what is likely to happen is Tielemans will drop deeper where he's actually better in my eyes, and they'll put more attacking players in either Buendia, Daniel Marlin or someone else into that sort of midfield attacking role alongside Rodgers, alongside Watkins and probably John McGinn, which just makes the lineup that they're going to put out more attacking than the conservative lineup they've put out. So it probably does boost someone like a Watkins, someone like a Rodgers if that player is not going to play and they're going to put a more attacking lineup. Spurs are next. You've also got Wolves high up there, Bournemouth, Manchester City, Crystal Palace. All of those teams we should be looking to target, and Liverpool as well. They have Arsenal this week, which is not great, but from game week 4 onwards, the fixtures do look really good. Now, lower down on the list, you do have Manchester United, you do have Arsenal. The fixtures for them are very mixed, and it is about picking the weeks that you want to go and buy them. So although a Dorgu, a Bruno Fernandes, a Brian and Burmo might look really appealing this week, and just like the Arsenal players looked really appealing last week, you have to understand that maybe the player you're selling, for example, a Florian Wirtz, although the fixture this week will encourage you to make the transfer, you've got to think about what it might mean going forward for your team, and particularly once game week 4 rolls around. Looking at the attack versus defense data, so of course this is just looking at XG per 90 on the left and XGC per 90 on the right for this season compared to the data that they had last year. Chelsea created the most XG so far this season, with Wolves creating the least. You've also got Arsenal, Manchester City, Brighton, Spurs and Manchester United up there. Really interesting to see Man United in 6th, despite having only scored 1 goal. They have not finished well so far this season. In terms of defences, Newcastle actually out on top. because they did so well against Aston Villa and actually kept Liverpool to under 1xG in that game despite conceding 3 goals. Chelsea high up there, Sunderland interestingly the third highest so far, Manchester City and Arsenal in terms of teams that have been really weak. Interesting to see Everton right at the bottom, conceded the most XG. They did keep a clean sheet against Brighton, although they conceded a penalty which Pickford saved, and they did concede an awful lot of XG against Leeds. You've also got Wolves, Leeds, West Ham down at the bottom, and we can see West Ham are probably the team that have underperformed the most from what we expected. Now, moving on to have a look at some players to buy. Starting off in defence, I do really like the Spurs defence, particularly because of the fixture you're buying into for Bournemouth, but they also have West Ham, Brighton, Wolves and Leeds in the next 5 fixtures. So Romero's actually top over Porro because I'm not sure I'm seeing quite enough attacking returns over the sort of past couple of games and in terms of his potential output to make him worthwhile over the DEFCON that I think Romero can get. I do think both of these are worth it over Van de Ven, although if you only have 4.5 million, Van de Ven should be considered. Cucurella I really like, and I kind of wish I'd started the season with him. He feels like a pretty easy set and forget option, although he is up to 6.1 million now. His points per 90 are good, with a return in the first game with a clean sheet and an assist in the second game. Underlying data in terms of attacking potential is even higher than Porro, is higher than any player that we've got on this list. Then we're looking at the Crystal Palace defenders. Again, I've gone with Lacroix just over Munoz, a bit like the Romero and Pedro Porro that we've got at the top. The DEFCON that Lacroix has got, he's hit DEFCON in both Game Week 1 and Game Week 2. And I'm not sure the Munoz attacking threat quite outweighs that with the 0.5 saving you have. I've gone with Dan Burn. The next couple of fixtures for them start to look really nice. He is very good for defensive contributions and his attacking threat is not bad. He's probably slightly above Tarkowski just because of the 0.5 saving that you've got, but Tarkowski remains very good for DEFCON and kept a clean sheet against Brighton, although actual defensive numbers, as we saw, a bit alarming. They were bottom for XG conceded so far this season. In terms of the 4.5 options, I like Van de Ven, I like Richards, and actually I like Diakite of Bournemouth. The other one you can have a look at, of course, you can have a look at Agbadou and Anderson, remain good picks, both got DEFCON, and also Dorgu. He's not in my top 6, but actually if you can rotate him in well, he probably works better than some of these, but if you had to play them every week, you're probably better with one of these 3 options. Moving into midfield, and I understand that there's already going to be, you've got Bruno Fernandes as your top midfielder to buy this week, and I completely get that you might not agree with that, and in terms of value, you might be better off going with someone like a Semenyo, a Brian Mbeumo, or a Kudus, but I do expect Bruno to remain on penalties. He's taking some set pieces. I do expect him to get minutes further forward at some point during matches. He's good for defensive contributions, as we've seen in both Game Week 1, where he missed it by 1, and in Game Week 2. So I do still like him with the upcoming fixtures, and we know he's reliable. But at 9 million, if you don't have that or you want a cheaper option, there are a lot of good cheaper options that you could probably opt for. Semenyo, highest scoring midfielder in the game. It is Spurs away this week who have looked good defensively, but generally the next 6 fixtures look good, and he's actually the highest XGI per 90 of all of the ones that we've got on this list. Brian Mbeumo is next if you want an alternative. I couldn't put Cunha on the list. I don't mind him, but I actually think Mbeumo is probably likely to get the more FPL points despite how impressive Cunha has been so far for Manchester United. Kudus, I like. The only issue with him is they are linked with lots of wingers, which I don't think will mean Kudus doesn't start, but I think it might impact his minutes slightly, and I'm still a little bit uncertain on his goal threat. 0.03 XG per 90 so far. His assist potential is the best on this list, and the fixtures are nice, but his goal threat is still leaving a bit to be desired. Gakpo is in here. If Liverpool don't sign Isak, Gakpo is a fantastic option. If they do sign Isak, it feels like Ekitike might get some minutes on the left, but Gakpo looks really good, and I've been very impressed with him. Of course, a couple of assists in that game on Monday night. Ismail Assar at 6.5. Of course, he picked up a goal against Nottingham Forest in Game Week 2. His actual data last season for all of the mids at his price, he was the best. So he is definitely a good pick, and the Palace fixtures going forward look good. It's just if they lose a bit of creativity without Eze there, which we do feel like we have seen over the past couple of games in Europe and in Game Week 2 without Eze. Anderson at 5.5, West Ham, Burnley, Sunderland in 3 of the next 4. You can't really go wrong. He's missed DEFCON by 1 in both of those games, and suddenly if he's 4 points better off, he looks like a great pick. Reinders as well, I still like, but actually I think if I was buying new, I like Anderson's next 4 fixtures more than I like Reinders, and of course you have that risk of Manchester City rotation, particularly after they've just lost 2-0, although I don't think Reinders will be one to drop out. We've then got a couple of other interesting differentials in here. I've gone with Dango Ouattara. Interesting, his first start for Brentford, he scored, he got bonus points, and he also picked up 16 DEFCON in just under 90 minutes. Sunderland this week is a really nice entry point at 6 million. Those midfielders at that price, with Rutter being a slight doubt, you've also got Tielemans not performing, could be an interesting one to go to, although I probably just about prefer Anderson and Reinders. And I made this graphic on Monday afternoon, and I had Anthony Gordon in here, but unfortunately he got sent off. So pivoting elsewhere to another Newcastle midfielder, I've actually gone with Alanga. Leeds and Wolves in the next two. His minutes look good. He's very, very good going forward. His pace is very difficult for defenders to deal with. So at 7 million, although I prefer some of the other options on this list, if you want Newcastle, now that Gordon's suspended, he's probably the one that I would look at. And then we're moving up front. Now, if you have the money to go and buy Erling Haaland, he is predicted on the Fantasy Football Scout members area to be the highest scoring forward over the next 6 weeks. And if you want to look for yourself or compare some of these players yourself, there is a link in the description which can give you 40% off plus an extra 5% if you use my code. And it is the site I use to build all of these tables, decide on the best players to buy, and decide on the players to pick in my team. And when we look at the free hit and wildcard drafts, there's a lot of that built in. Still offering 40% off if you do want to check them out. Chris Wood is next. I love the next 4 fixtures, as I said, with Elliot Anderson. I like Watkins. Maybe the value's not quite there, but I still look at the fixtures for them and really like it. I would go with Chris Wood over going with João Pedro, just based off the short-term fixtures that Wood does have, and just the amount of chances that Forest love to create with him in those sort of games. And then we're going with Ekitike, and a lot revolves around Alexander Isak. If Isak goes to Liverpool, I'm not sure I'd have Ekitike on this list at all. And if Isak doesn't go to Liverpool, I think Ekitike will probably be second, if not top, of the best forwards to buy going into game week 4. So please keep an eye on it. What's going to happen with the Isak transfer, because it will completely change what happens to Ekitike as a pick. Then we've got Mateta. I like him just like I like Sarr. They feel like solid options. Just without Eze there, I've gone with João Pedro and Chris Wood over them, also because of the fixtures. Gyökeres is next. 2 goals, of course, in game week 2, but it was against Leeds. The next 4 fixtures probably mean we wait and see and we look again in game week 7, but you can't go too horribly wrong, I don't think. Although without Odegaard and Saka, you probably expect them to create less chances. Then it's Evan Nilsson, actually the forward that's really struggled so far this season, and I do worry a bit about his finishing, but when you look at the Bournemouth fixtures, you've got to expect them to score goals, and if you can't get to Semenyo in your midfield, Evan Nilsson is not a bad alternative and is very safe for minutes. Strand Larsen is in at number 9. Please be cautious because of the potential transfer of him to Newcastle. If he goes and becomes first choice at Newcastle, he'll be in everyone's teams, and if he stays at Wolves, he'll be a really nice option with their upcoming fixtures. It's just if he goes to Newcastle and someone else goes, that's when the issue arises. And then if you need a cheaper one, Thiago at Brentford. They are linked with a couple of other forwards. Again, be cautious of the transfer window, but the upcoming fixtures are not bad, and his data and being on penalties make him not a bad, reliable pick for the next few weeks. So just to talk about a few popular transfer combinations, and it's just a few ideas if you're selling Cole Palmer of what you might be looking to do with your team. The first one is you could just downgrade him straight away, and we've spoken about lots of midfielders to buy, and that's absolutely fine. But if you've got him and another forward you want to make with a couple of transfers, so you could sell him and your cheap forward like Mark Guiu and go to Semenyo and Chris Wood. Of course, Chris Wood could be João Pedro. A couple of transfers I really like, and actually a couple of transfers I'm really considering for my own team, and we'll talk about that in my team selection video tomorrow. And the Fantasy Football Scout predicted points predict, if Palmer is out, that Semenyo and Chris Wood look like 2 of the best options to buy for the next 6 weeks. If you've got someone like a Fulkrog, or for example, if Strand Larsen looks like he's going to be an issue, or you've got another cheap option in your forward line, you could go to likes of Brian and Burmo, along with João Pedro or Chris Wood, or even you could still opt for Semenyo and just leave money in the bank. All of those options I like. If you are set that you want to sell Ollie Watkins, now, because of the price changes, you can't go to a 5.5 million mid and Haaland if you don't have money in the bank, which is really frustrating. But if Spurs don't look like they're going to do lots in the transfer window, perhaps Sarr at 5 million is a really interesting one. Douglas Luiz at Nottingham Forest at the same price. You could also go back to Dewsbury Hall, but at the moment, the 5 million ones feel like they're a little bit more difficult to predict. So you're either looking at Sarr, or you're going to add another transfer in as a -4 to free up money for Haaland. I'm not sure I like the bottom one enough. I think I'd be opting for 1 and 2 if you're looking to sell Palmer, unless you just are absolutely set on buying Haaland. And then we're just going to rattle through a wildcard and a free hit draft, starting off with the free hit. So it's really targeting Man United and also a little bit of Nottingham Forest, Chelsea, Spurs, and getting Haaland in. And we've also punted on Elanga for that Leeds fixture. We've got double Spurs with Porro and Kudus and triple Man United. Now, part of the reason that people are looking to play the free hit this week is you might own someone like an Aït-Nouri, you might own someone like a Palmer, you might own a few players who are issues going into game week 3, but you think they'll be back after the international break in game week 4. In which case, playing the free hit, if it works out, is not the worst idea. And it worked really well for people who played it in game week 2. The only issue is if those players are not back in game week 3, you're going to be looking at a team with just as many issues in game week 4 as you are now. And although the team looks nice, you are punting on a Spurs team against a Bournemouth side who've looked good. You're punting an awful lot on Manchester United. Now, you could look at doing something different. Like you could just play another Forest player. You could play another Chelsea player. There are a few other picks that you could add in. But I'm not sure the free hit looks strong enough to really play it this week. A lot of us have quite a strong team that if the likes of Palmer, Saka, or Aït-Nouri that you've got who are issues that you're fixing with a free hit are also going to be issues in game week 4, I'm not really sure I'd consider playing it. I don't love it this week. I don't love it this early. But if you're looking to play it, this is something of what a draft would look like. And then looking at a wildcard draft, and I'm really cautious again for similar reasons about playing the wildcard this week, because so much could happen in the transfer window that would change what a wildcard draft would look like for game week 3 versus game week 4. Also, game week 4 is the international break. There's a small chance of added injuries, a little bit of extra information. Of course, the transfer window shuts on Monday. I really urge you, even if you're not that happy with your team, to delay it until game week 4. Because something like an Ekitike is such a swinging factor of a wild card. How do Manchester United look? How do Liverpool look? How do Chelsea look? Can you go back for Cole Palmer? Because if you're wildcarding this week, you're taking out Palmer and you're not going Ekitike. But next week, you'd probably go triple Liverpool and you might have Palmer back and you might not go Chris Wood. So this is what a draft would look like. But I would really urge you, if you're considering wildcarding this week, of course, play it your way. If you want a wildcard, that's absolutely fine. And the team does look much better than my team looks this week. So you'll probably be up on it. But I would just be a little bit cautious of, can I get through game week 3 with a transfer, maybe a -4 on some 1 week punts? Like take some players this week into your team who are good this week if you need to fix some issues, and then wildcarding game week 4. But if you want to play it this week, I've gone Sanchez, Dubravka, I've gone Dorgu, Milenkovic, Porro with Lacroix, lots of good defenders. Nice options at their price and lots of flexibility there. I've gone Salah over going with Haaland, so it's Salah, Semenyo, Reinders and Mbeumo over going with Fernandes. You've got Ismail Assar on the bench ready to sub in. João Pedro, Chris Wood and Watkins. Watkins can be Ekitike if you want. Watkins can be Gyökeres. Watkins can be a cheaper forward. There's lots that you can do in that spot, but I still back the Villa fixtures that I probably would go with him until we know the Liverpool forward situation and until the Arsenal fixtures get a bit better. And that is all for the main structured part of the video. So what we're going to do now is just wrap up by very quickly going through all 10 games that we have this weekend and just talk about a few things. So what we've got, of course, on the right-hand side, we've got the fixtures, but on the left-hand side from Rob T FPL, you've got the projections for goals scored and clean sheets. So clean sheets, Manchester United, Forest, Chelsea, also Villa. But I would probably be looking at Man United, Forest, Chelsea as the most reliable options for goals scored. For clean sheets, or in terms of goals scored, Man United, Chelsea, but then you've also got Spurs, City and Forest. So a slightly bigger spread in terms of potential goals compared to clean sheets. Chelsea, Fulham, you're probably not investing in Fulham, although maybe if Muniz is going to keep his spot, 5.5 million up front for him could be quite nice. Anderson, not bad for DEFCON. At Chelsea, I know people will look at Neto, I know people will look at Enzo, but it really is João Pedro or Palmer in the midfield and attack that I'd consider. And if Palmer's out, it leaves just João Pedro. Defensively, Sanchez I still like. It doesn't look like we're going to sign a centre-back, so Tosin looks like he could be nailed at 4.5 million. One to keep an eye on. Manchester United, we've spoken a lot about them. In defence, it's probably only Dorgu. In midfield, I like Fernandes, Cunha and Mbeumo. I probably would go Mbeumo if you want value, but Fernandes is probably still my favourite pick. Spurs, Bournemouth. Now, this week, Semenyo is probably the only Bournemouth player that you really need to buy this week, but I don't mind Diakite. I also don't mind Evan Nilsson, and it looks like Kluivert might be close to returning for them. Spurs is the main factor here. I wouldn't buy Richarlison. I wouldn't buy Solanke. Probably would only buy Papsar or Kudus in their midfield, but keep an eye on what business they do in the transfer window and in defence. There's lots of them we've spoken about, and also Vicario in goal if you needed a goalkeeper. Sunderland, Brentford. This game is quite difficult to call. Brentford were much better, or was that Aston Villa not being great? Sunderland were very good in game week 1, but also they weren't great in game week 2. I do think at some point Mark Guiu is going to come into that. He started for them in the Cup on Tuesday. Is that them getting the minutes? At Brentford, Van den Berg, we had last year, looks a very good pick for defensive contributions. Kelleher is not bad, of course, in goal if you need that. Still probably prefer Petrovic at the price. Thiago, I don't mind. Dango Ratara, but they are linked with a new striker. Into the Wolves team, they do have Everton at home. So Jose Sarr if you needed a goalkeeper. Agbadu in defence. Arias in midfield. Strand Larsen. I probably would be staying away from buying new into the attack until we know what's happening with Strand Larsen. Everton. Now, Ilman Ndiaye looked very good, but he got taken off early, potentially with a knock. Jack Grealish with 2 assists is one I'm going to keep an eye on. I'm not going to go piling into it just yet. I want to see a bit of goal threat. And I'm not sure I'd be buying defensively that much. They did concede a lot of XG so far this season, but Grealish, really want to keep an eye on. If you've got Dewsbury Hall, I also wouldn't panic. I do think with Dibbling signing, he might start to drop a bit deeper when Dibbling is on the pitch alongside Ndiaye and Grealish. I just think Grealish could be a great option, especially if he goes back to playing the number 10. Leeds, Newcastle. Both teams are likely to be without several key players. I think it's very hard to invest new here, apart from Newcastle if you want a punt, Dan Burn in defence or Elanga in midfield. On to the Sunday games. Brighton City, I feel like is quite difficult to call. Let's see if Rutter is back on Wednesday night. If he's not, you might look to need to sell him. Of course, we've spoken about a few options earlier. Outside of that, you're probably looking at City. You're probably not buying defensively. It's Haaland if you want him, or maybe Reinders. Forest, West Ham. It's all about target West Ham. Sell your West Ham players. Buy your Forest players for 3 of their next 4 being West Ham, Sunderland, Burnley. In defence, they're all still good. Don't sell them. Sells I like in goal. Anderson in midfield. I do not expect to be impacted enough by Douglas Luiz. Gibbs White is probably too expensive. And then, of course, it's Chris Wood up front. Then we're moving into Liverpool-Arsenal. It's probably an avoid this week unless it's part of another transfer. Probably for both teams. It's a difficult game to call. I like Liverpool. I like their attack. But what happens with Isak will have a big knock-on impact of which of their attackers we want. And Arsenal, let's see how they get on without Saka and maybe without Odegaard. And the final game on Sunday, Aston Villa. I've said probably keep hold of Rodgers and Watkins unless you're using it to do other things. And Crystal Palace, there's lots of good options, but with them playing Thursday and then playing Sunday, you probably don't need to go straight into them unless you're maybe playing your wildcard this week. So that is it all. This is probably the longest video I've recorded in a while. If you've enjoyed it, if you found it useful, please let me know, because this is always the longest video. It's always full of a lot of data, as I've said, which all comes from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. Please check the link in the description if you want to be able to do all of this analysis yourself. And if you don't agree with something, if you want to go and check it, look at other players, do other comparisons, please do consider it, because I absolutely love it. Any questions which you have, which are still not answered in this video, drop them all in the comment section down below. But fingers crossed. I mean, I've discussed every team here. I probably missed someone, but let me know. Any feedback, bits you like on this video, bits you don't. There's a lot. So let me finish it. I'm a bit tired. Thank you all for watching. 2,000 likes is the aim. Drop any questions you have in the comment section. Enjoy your tinkering. 2,000 likes. Subscribe if you're new. And I'll be back again very soon.